Good morning, guys. Today we are going to move on from talking about coordinating conjunctions and talking about subordinating clauses and conjunctions. I know it can sound super confusing, but it's not as confusing as you might think. Okay, so just hang tight. We're going to work through the PowerPoint. You're going to do something similar to yesterday where you're going to take notes as you go through the PowerPoint and then submit them to me at the end of class. So before we move on, I just want to review coordinating conjunctions real quick. So again, yesterday you learned about fanboys, and fanboy stands for these words, which we use to connect either two words or two clauses together. So we're going to look at the other type of conjunction, as I mentioned, which is the subordinating conjunction. So subordinating conjunctions join a subordinate clause to a main clause. And remember that a main clause is basically a sentence. It means it could stand alone. Okay, so we had talked about main clauses and joining two clauses or two words together when we were talking about coordinating conjunctions. So with subordinating conjunctions, we're going to join a main clause, which means a sentence that can stand alone, with a subordinate clause. So again, it sounds like it could be really confusing, but it's actually a little bit easier than you think. So when we think about joining a subordinate clause and a main clause, I want you to think of the main clause like a nurse in a hospital, okay? So a nurse can stand alone without the help of anyone else, okay? So she's perfectly healthy, she's capable of being there and being alone without any assistance. A subordinate clause you can think of as a patient with a broken leg. All right, she is unable to stand alone, and she needs help from the nurse or main clause in order to stand. Okay, so the main clause doesn't need anybody, but the subordinate clause needs a little help from the main clause in order to make it a complete thought. So if I look at the sentence as after the movie was over, we went to Dairy Queen. Which part of the sentence is the main clause that can stand alone, meaning that it's a complete sentence? So is after the movie was over a complete sentence, or we went to Dairy Queen a complete sentence? So the second part of the sentence, we went to Dairy Queen, would be considered the main clause, which means that after the movie was over would be considered the subordinate clause. So after the movie was over is not a complete thought, okay? It cannot stand alone. It needs the main clause, which we just talked about, in order to make it a complete sentence. So what I need you to do is go into Schoology and open up the conjunction notes for today, okay? We're going to work through the notes as we work through the PowerPoint, very similar to yesterday's activity. And you can pause the video if you need to. So our next one says, as soon as you finish painting, I need to clean the brushes. So which part of the sentence is the main clause? So again, which one of these can stand alone, is a complete thought all by itself? And that answer would be, I need to clean the brushes. So then which part is the subordinate clause, which means it cannot stand alone? And that's going to be the first part, which says, as soon as you finish painting. I'm going to tell the teacher unless you apologize right now. So which one of those can stand alone? I'm going to tell the teacher. And which part is the subordinate clause? Would be the second part, which is unless you apologize right now. All right, you need to finish your homework while I am cooking supper. So which one's the main clause and which one's subordinate clause? So which one of those phrases can stand alone? And the answer would be, you need to finish your homework, okay? And the subordinate clause would then be, while I am cooking dinner. So again, this part that's underlined in blue is a fragment. It's an incomplete sentence. It cannot stand alone. So that's what makes it a subordinate clause. If I don't clean my room, I will be in big trouble with my mom. So the main clause would be, I will be in big trouble with my mom. And that means if I don't clean my room is going to be the subordinate clause. Now you'll notice that sometimes there's a comma here between the two clauses, okay? When do we use a comma? So the comma is going to happen if the subordinate clause is first. Okay, so if you see the subordinate clause first, like we do here, you're going to put a comma before the main clause. If the main clause is first, I'm going to go backwards here for a second. So here the main clause is first. I do not need a comma when I follow up with a subordinate clause. Okay? Okay, so I'm going to say this one more time, and we'll continue to practice it as we sort of work through in the next couple problems. But when the main clause comes first in the sentence, you do not have a comma. Okay, so main clause is before the subordinate clause, no comma is needed. When the subordinate clause comes first before the main clause, like in this example, then I need a comma. Okay? All right, so just like with coordinating conjunctions, we talked about fanboys. Today with subordinating conjunctions, we're going to look at the phrase like a white bus. And these are some subordinating conjunctions. I am not going to make you write them on your study guide today or your note sheet. I already left them there for you at the top. Okay, so let's look back at some of our previous sentences and find the conjunctions. Okay, so in sentence 1, my conjunction is going to be after. Again, after the movie was over is my subordinate clause. We went to Dairy Queen is my main clause. And so since the subordinate clause comes first, I need a comma. As soon as we finish painting, I need to clean the brushes. So again, the subordinating clause comes first. Okay, this is the subordinating clause. So I need a comma. I'm going to tell the teacher unless you apologize right now. So unless is my subordinating conjunction. And my main clause is first. I'm going to tell the teacher is my main clause. So I do not need a comma because the main clause is first. You need to finish your homework while I am cooking supper. So while is going to be my conjunction. The main clause is first. So I do not need a comma. And then if I don't clean my room, I will be in big trouble with my mom. If is my conjunction. This is my subordinating clause. Okay, so I need a comma before the main clause. So again, they're showing you that when the subordinating clause comes first, that you need a comma before you have the main clause. So what we're going to look at now is looking at two sentences and joining them together using a subordinating conjunction. So Noah was absent 3 days last week. Noah scored an A on his science test. So again, notice how I used Noah multiple times. So those are the types of things we want to not repeat. So I could say something like, even though Noah was absent 3 days last week, he scored an A on his science test. So even though is my subordinating conjunction. This is my subordinating clause, so I need a comma before I write my main clause. Wash your hands, do it before you start making cookies. So how can I join those together using a subordinating conjunction? So wash your hands before you start making cookies. Okay, so before would be my conjunction. Or you could say, before you start making cookies, wash your hands. Okay, so you'll notice that this is a clause, so I need a comma before I get to the main clause. I twisted my ankle, someone left a ball on the step. So you could say, I twisted my ankle because someone left a ball on the step. Or you could say, because someone left a ball on the step, I twisted my ankle. Okay, so notice how some of them I need a comma and some of them I don't. It depends on how you write the sentence. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is to submit your notes to me via Schoology. And then what you're going to do is go in and take your complete the marking period 2 subordinating conjunctions practice. So that's going to be the end of your English work today. However, you also need to turn in your final draft of your personal narrative. A couple of you sent it to me yesterday. I don't want it just in an email. Okay, so please follow the directions in your folder today. I created an assignment that has a rubric attached. Please submit it through that assignment so that I can grade it via Schoology using the rubric that's provided. I definitely encourage you to check out the rubric also before you submit, just to make sure that you completed everything, okay? In your folder today, I also put in there the MLA format example. I put in there punctuating dialogue for you. And I also put in there transitions and speaker tags for you guys to reference. So please use your resources, read over your essay one final time before you submit it. These would be the last couple of grades going in for you for the marking period. Okay, we want to make them the best possible. Okay, guys? If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, have a great weekend. Make sure you submit your notes. Make sure you go and do the conjunctions practice. And make sure you submit your final personal narrative. All right, guys? Have a great weekend.